A buyer I was just talking to almost made a huge mistake, and it all started with walking into a new construction sales office alone. Let me tell you what happened, because I hear about this happening all the time. Buyers just get excited, they go say, oh, let's go check out that model home today. They walk in, they meet the sales rep, and before you know it, they're signing papers without an agent, and it can be a little bit scary. So let's break it down for you. So when you walk into a builder's model home, the first thing they do is have a sales rep greet you. You're going to walk in, they're going to be super friendly, they're going to be excited, they're going to ask what brings you in today, learn more about you and what you're looking for. All this is really great. Just keep in mind that sales rep represents the builder. So it's their job to make sure that you feel comfortable and start understanding what you're looking for so they can try to match you with a perfect home that they have for sale. That's great, especially when you're in the model. You know, everything looks shiny and new, but just keep in mind not everything is always what it seems. Once you tour the model home, obviously you're going to fall in love with the finishes, right? The kitchen is gorgeous. There's decorations, it's staged, it looks amazing. And you say, of course I can picture myself living here. What you don't always know is that those are the top of the line upgrades and may not be always standard features that are included in your house. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. But when you get through the model, you just feel so excited and your emotions really come into play, and that's what builder reps are trained for. And that's where things can start to get a little bit tricky. Like I said, builder reps are really helpful, but they do work for the builder. I was one of them at one point. I worked for an amazing builder, but at the end of the day, I represented the builder's best interest and not the best interest of the buyers. And that's a huge reason why I'm a realtor on the resale side of things now, because I really want to look out for the buyers and their best interests. When you're walking through a model home, you're talking with the sales rep, you know, it's their job to protect the builder's interests, and they're negotiating on behalf of the builder. So of course they're going to give you options and things that are really exciting to you, but may not be always the best fit for you in the long run. So kind of think about it like this. When you go to a car dealership, there's a salesperson there that's of course trying to find the best car for you, but they're negotiating on the sales, like the car dealer's behalf. So it's not always somebody that's looking out for you. And guiding you along the way does not equal representation. And so that's why we as realtors always like to be there to help you as the buyer, because there's so many things that go into it. So let's talk about some challenges when it comes to negotiating. A lot of people think that the builder price is fixed. And in some cases, sure, they might be, but there can be really a lot of great opportunity if the house has been sitting for a while. Maybe there's a lot that no one has wanted. Maybe it's backing to the street, or, you know, something that's a little less desirable. If you're okay with that, sometimes we can push back and try to get you a deal on that house or that lot that's been sitting there. Some builders have, you know, quick delivery homes where they are actually built, you know, they've been building, this house has been sitting, they need this to go. So we can always try to negotiate and leverage, you know, their wanting to get rid of that house so it can benefit you potentially on the sales price or potentially on closing help. Sometimes it can be a little challenging though, because often their closing cost credits, which they might advertise as being available, may be tied to working with their preferred lender and or title company. It's always your decision if you want to work with your own lender or title, but keep in mind, you might not get that incentive from the builder if you work with your own. And oftentimes it's huge. $10,000 is pretty common to see if you work with a builder's lender. But I did just have a situation. We had clients that were under contract on a new construction home, and we did negotiate, I think, $2,500 at least towards their closing costs, and they were still able to use their own lender. So that in the long run can be huge for you, because oftentimes your lender may actually provide better interest rates than the builder's lender. You also know that you have the comfort of supporting the person that's been there for you. Maybe you've worked with your own lender in the past, so there's lots of benefits to working with your own lender versus the builder reps. But they are there for you and will help you as well, but keep in mind they represent most likely the new construction company. A couple other things that we could help negotiate on would be potentially an interest rate buy down. So maybe you are working with that builder's lender. We can always see if they are willing to offset buying down your interest rate with some of the lender credits that they're giving you, and that can help you save money on your monthly payment. So something to consider there if you're definitely concerned about what your payment's looking like versus just the overall total cost of the home. home. And some other things that we can look into are the different options and builder upgrades that they have. I know when we were first buying our first home, I was really excited about the wrought iron railings instead of the regular white ones. And we were kind of, hemming and hawing, thanks to my husband. He was like, I really want those, but I don't want to spend the money on them. And just sitting right there and kind of pushing back, the sales rep said, okay, well, let me see if we can get those thrown in for you. So sometimes they have the ability to kind of offer different incentives while you're even in the process of picking out your selections and going from there. So not everybody will do that, but sometimes they can. It's always worth a shot. I say you're not going to get what you don't ask for, so you will always ask. And another thing too, a huge thing that builders, put on prices of homes are lot premiums. That land over here versus over here did not cost them much different. It's just one huge pile of money that they paid for that big piece of land that the neighborhood's going to be on, but they will charge buyers premiums for different lots. So if you have a lot, at the beginning of the neighborhood, it's near a busy road versus maybe a lot that's in the back that's facing trees, oftentimes they will put a premium on something with more of a wooded view or a corner lot or a larger lot versus something a little bit smaller and maybe not as desirable. But we can always try to negotiate on the lot premiums as well, because that's just straight profit to the seller or the builder in that case. So if you don't try to ask for, credits or different incentives, you are definitely leaving money on the table. And that's where we as agents can help you negotiate that on your behalf. The third challenge about working with a builder without an agent is that model homes are designed to sell you emotionally. They want you to walk through, like I said, and just fall in love, see how amazing the house can look. But again, everything you see could be upgraded. So I know when I worked for a builder, we actually had two different model homes. We had the one that was top of the line, totally decked out, smart home features, just gorgeous finishes. And that was designed on purpose, again, to make you fall in love and get really excited. They also had a model that was more of the kind of like the standard and level 1 finishes versus the one on the corner was the top tier and maybe like the second tier just below that. But it's nice when you can see two different homes, but most builders don't do that. Most of them just have one model home that is showing everything they possibly have and gets you super excited. But what we can do is walk through with either the design center or if it's just with the builder. Everybody's a little bit different on how they actually go about helping you pick out finishes. Some builders like Lennar offer packages, or they call it looks. Ryan Homes has certain packages as well. But then if you're working with, a totally custom builder, they have so many options and it can be overwhelming. But depending on what type of builder you're working with, we can actually sit down. I can help you. We also have other, contacts that could help with designing as well. And often the builder will have a design rep that's there to guide you along the way. But as far as looking at what is, going to help you enjoy your home while you're living there, but also think about it from a resale perspective and what actually makes sense. Because every single option that you put in, it just taking up that price tag. And I always like to think about it. Sure, you might take your sale price from, the base price that the builder is offering. I'm just going to say $500,000. Often you'll see 10, 15, maybe even 20% on top of that base price as your options. So a $500,000 house could turn into a $600,000 or even higher priced home. But we want to make sure that you're thinking about it in, again, the right way, because often those upgraded options come with higher margins for the builders. One thing that I think is interesting, I remember when I had clients looking at upgrading from carpet to LVP in their home. Whatever the cost was for the LVP, it was actually more affordable for the clients to get carpet in the house and replace the LVP after they moved in, because the price tag that the builder was putting on the LVP flooring was just astronomical. And they knew that as sad as it was to tear out perfectly good carpet, it would save them money in the long run by adding it themselves later. So that's something to think through. Is you get excited about all the updates, but if it's something that you can easily do on your own, it may save you money in the long run. On the flip side, sometimes people just think, I'm not handy, I don't want to have to deal with it. We've got a family, kids, pets, you name it. We just want the house to be done and move-in ready. I can understand that too. But we just want to be there to help guide you and help you understand where the upgrade track might be and help you so you're not overspending and kind of blowing yourself out of your budget in the long run. The fourth challenge when it comes to working with a builder without having an agent is that not every builder contract is designed with the buyer in mind. Usually that contract is written so it is very favorable to the builder. Quick story, we had some clients that were under contract with a builder. The timeline was just they just kept dragging on. They finally started construction in the winter. And after the foundation was poured, they started building the house. They realized there was significant cracking in the foundation. And the buyers got really scared. They're saying, I don't feel comfortable. This house doesn't seem right. They had inspectors check it out. The builder originally was not willing to make any changes to the repairs. And by that time, the buyers just felt super uncomfortable and they were trying to back out of the contract. They're very tricky. And we actually referred them to an attorney because the way, it is, builders are allowed to have delays. They're allowed to have certain timelines that they don't actually have to meet, but you have to be very punctual. You have to get your deposits in and you have to do everything you're supposed to do. But builders have a lot more leniency on what they're able to get away with. And in this case, these clients were waiting for months and months and months, and it became really frustrating. They, were trying to move out of their house. They were waiting, and it just became a really unfortunate situation. Luckily, they got in touch with an attorney and were able to get out of that contract. But sometimes, it's just out of your hands, and those delays can really impact you as the buyer when you're trying to move from point A to point B. So just something to think about is if you have an agent on your side, we can help push the builder along. We can help you negotiate. We can connect you if you end up needing an attorney with the right person who can help you get through that situation. But at the end of the day, those contracts are very, very heavily focused on protecting the seller, and in this case, the builder. So just keep in mind, it's always important that you read through those. We, as your agent, will read through the contract as well and help point out things that seem different or inconsistent with the standard contract in your state. It's a different level of protection with those contracts, and it's just not designed for you as the buyer. So we always want to make sure that we're reading through. I just did this with clients of mine recently. They're like, hey, Allie, what do you think about this contract? I read through it, as I always do, and I just make my little bullet points. Hey, just want you to be aware of this. So you'd have to get a 10% deposit in. We actually negotiated, instead of a 10% deposit, we did a $10,000 deposit. And some builders will be more flexible on deposit schedules. So it's always, again, we like to help you just be aware of what the contract actually states, what's normal, and what's maybe something we should pay attention to or try to negotiate on the builder. So keep that in mind. The fifth challenge that we're looking at are resale value mistakes. Buyers are thinking about building their house today for what they're looking for, which is always great. We want to love our home. We want to be excited about it, but we need to also be aware of future resale. There is a point where you can overspend and it can end up costing you a lot of money because not every option and every upgrade will give you that dollar for dollar return. I've actually seen it, I won't say who, but somebody recently, I was working with a builder, and this is going to be hopefully their forever home, and they just want it to be exactly what they want. But it turns out after they put all these upgrades in, it was overpriced for the neighborhood. So they had an issue with the appraisal. And that's something that we need to keep in mind too. In a builder contract, if your house doesn't appraise, you are paying for the difference in those options in cash. So that buyer who's building their home, they made it, really exciting. It's going to be gorgeous, and I'm so happy. Can't wait to visit. But keep in mind, because they wanted those upgrades, those different options and beautiful finishes, they are going to be paying for that out of pocket, and they can't just roll that into their loan amount. So if you are a buyer who wants to add a lot of really great updates or upgrades in the home, just be aware, we need to make sure it's still within, a kind of a range of what other homes in the neighborhood are selling for. Otherwise, you might be forced to come up with cash and pay out of pocket. Not everybody has extra cash to do that, so just be careful in that. Another thing to think about too, when you are picking finishes, is there are a lot of trends out there. Most finishes, classic, there's certain things that will last forever and always be in style. But there are certain finishes that can feel more trendy than others. And just keep in mind, if it's overly trendy, it might be something that you'll need to replace again in the future. So, I always try to stick with something that feels great, but just don't overdo it as far as the trends go, different crazy cabinet colors, things like that. But again, we still want you to love it, but just be mindful for the future. And of course, we do want to consider the layout functionality of a house as well. I remember when we were looking to buy a house and we were thinking, okay, love this living room, it flows nice to the kitchen, but where do we put a TV? And there was a wall that was really tiny, and if you know my husband, we want an 85-inch TV. That's great, but we had to stick with like a 55 or 65 that was like hanging over the edge of the wall. So little things like that, you might not care about a TV, but it is important, I think, as you're walking through to imagine how you'll be living in this space. Where would your furniture fit? Now, I also, to the other point of that, if your furniture doesn't fit and you still love the house, you can always get new furniture. It's still nice to be mindful, thinking about the layout. How does it feel? How's it function? Is the cabinet and the counter on the other side gonna bump into each other if you open the fridge door and this drawer? Things like that. I always say try to just feel as if you were living there, and what does that seem like to you? And if it feels great, good, keep moving. Another challenge we face when buyers go in without an agent to a model home is that the sales reps are designed and educated to create urgency and pressure on buyers to want to get them to move forward very quickly. So a lot of things they'll say is, okay, we're selling out of this phase, there's only 2 lots left, you better put your deposit down, or hey, prices are going up into the next phase very soon, you better start picking your lot and get your deposit down again, or hey, we're only offering this incentive for this weekend, so you better, let's sign that contract today. And the pressure itself just creates urgency, and the urgency creates emotion. And that's what we're there to help protect you from. We'll talk through it. If you're excited and you're ready to go, amazing, we're going to be there for you. But keep in mind, some of those incentives may still be there the next day. Like, we don't want you to feel rushed. We want you to feel educated, informed, and really understand what you're getting yourself into. So if we can try to take the emotion out of it, we can continue to be strategic. And I always remember this couple we just helped buy new construction. The wife was super excited. She's like, I just want to buy it. This is my home. I know it. And the husband's like, chill out. We got to play it cool. We don't want them to know that you love it so much. Don't tell them that, because we wanted to use some of the leverage that we could create by not showing that we have so much emotion behind it. And that was the one that worked. We did get them to talk. We talked them down from $0 to $2,500 in that particular case. So it can be helpful. Again, if we can try to remove the emotion from it and help you negotiate through that, sometimes it's a win for the buyer. So the last challenge that I want to mention is that buyers often just don't know what they don't know. And that's okay. But that's why we as realtors are here to help you and guide you through the process when you are working with a new home builder and the sales rep in the office. So especially first-time buyers, if you've never done this before, it can feel overwhelming. And again, the new home sales rep is there to represent the seller. They're giving you information. They maybe aren't sharing everything, or you could just be getting a lot of information, like drinking from a fire hose and not really retaining it all. One thing that comes to mind is when you're buying new construction, often there's something called a front foot fee or deferred water and sewer charges, where this is a new community. They have to actually build out the infrastructure to bring water and sewer to that piece of land. And oftentimes the builder will build it, pay for it, but then recoup the funds that major expense from the buyers over time in the front foot fee. Sometimes this is a $500 annual charge. Most recently, we saw a $1,000 annual fee. So the builder allegedly mentioned that at this first time of their initial meeting, but when the buyers moved in, they got this bill and they were so shocked. They weren't expecting a $1,000 bill at the end of December. And that's something that if we are in the office with you, we can help ask those questions. Is there a front foot fee? What are the HOA dues? What's included in the HOA? And the list goes on and on. So again, if you've never gone through this, that might be something that you wouldn't know to ask or to get all the information on. But it is in the builder contract. So then when we are reading through that contract with you, and hopefully the builder usually will walk through it with you as well, that's something we'll be looking for those fees and wanting to make sure that it's pointed out to you so you understand and won't have any surprises going forward. I would say the biggest risk to buyers isn't necessarily making a bad decision, but it's just not knowing that you made a mistake somewhere along the way. Everything is fixable, of course, but we just want to help you be in the best position possible for yourself in that moment and in the future. So when you go to resell the house, hopefully you make lots of equity. You made lots of equity and get to sell your home for hopefully even more than you bought it for. If you're even thinking about new construction, the best thing to do is call your agent ahead of time, and we can set the appointment for you. We can be there with you in person. That way we're there for you every step of the way and making sure that you feel, that you have somebody representing you in your best interests. I always remember working with the builder, like, okay, like, who can we get under contract this week? And there's urgency there, and I just don't love that. I want you to be able to take your time and feel excited and empowered and confident in the decision you're making, and not just feel pressure to move forward. The people that I know that recently walked into the model home, they just fell in love. They knew it was their home. That's so exciting, but they didn't have an agent. And I said, okay, here's me, agent. I'm like making sure that they are okay. I'm like, make sure you at least get a home inspection. And that's something else too that not every buyer would think about when you're actually going to buy your home. Is like, oh, it's brand new. What could go wrong? Lots of things go wrong with new construction. I've seen, this air supply in a bathroom be, the vent being totally covered up by drywall. I've seen a pantry that should have been, totally square was actually like cockeyed like this. And, we get the inspector to come out, we get those things on the report, we share that inspection report back with the builder, say, hey builder, please fix these things. I've seen lots of other things that we could continue to run down the list of what was going on, but it's such a big investment. We want to make sure that you have somebody there on your side and are feeling confident every step of the way. The builder's not going to tell you to go get your own third-party home inspector. They're not going to tell you could use your own lender, and they're not going to offer those incentives. So there are things that we can do to help you and protect your interests and make it as smooth as possible. We, of course, take care of communicating with the agents. We help you with scheduling your settlements, you're going through the contract, just being your person in your corner. And we just want to make sure that you feel great and are protected. So again, if you're thinking about new construction and buying a home, just remember, bringing a realtor with you costs you nothing, but it can absolutely save you thousands of dollars in the long run. If you're thinking about buying new construction, don't walk in that model home alone. You deserve someone there to be your advocate and help you every step of the way. So if you're buying a new home in Delaware, Maryland, or Pennsylvania, we've got you covered. We would love to help you. So feel free to send me a message or call me at the numbers below. I look forward to hearing from you. I'm Allie Hudler with Compass, and we'll see you soon.